Hello and welcome to our 36th edition of FSI Fridays. I'm Johansson live in Charlotte, joined by
Edwin in Boston.
Hey Edwin, what do we have lined up for today?
Thanks, Johansson. And for those in the audience, today we're going to talk about the trends and influences in the banking industry.
Second, we'll talk about the impact of the global pandemic and how it led to the world to the next great disruption.
Third, we'll discuss how this affects the future of banking and Microsoft's perspectives.
Then we'll wrap it up with Q&A.
Today on FSI Fridays. For those of you watching live, please use the Q&A window and we'll monitor for questions during the presentation or comments below if you're watching on YouTube.
So let's get started and meet the presenters for today. Edwin, who's our special guest this week?
We are honored to be joined by two accomplished guests today. Let's start with you, Gene. Thanks for being on the show. Can you let the audience know what your role is at Microsoft and what your typical day entails? I've noticed you have a quite lovely voice, and I hear your previous life frequently involved a microphone and a follow spot.
I do love a follow spot. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me. I am an industry advocate at Microsoft, and that means I work with our account teams to help drive business transformation within banking and financial services.
The microphone and follow spot.
Oh, yeah. I was an opera singer and a cabaret singer. I studied voice for years. I even went to music and art high school, and I thought I had quite the career on a stage and with that follow spot.
Thanks, Gene. We're also honored to be joined by Sandeep Nagaraj. Sandeep, can you share with the audience your role at Microsoft? And we also hear you picked up some new skills to fight the COVID blues.
Thanks, Johansson. And thanks, Edwin, for having me on the show today. I'm an industry executive here with the financial services team, focused on our banking and financial provider clients. My mandate, similar to Gene, is to engage business decision makers, understand what is top of mind for them, what are some of the opportunities that they're pursuing, what are challenges they're facing, and then make sure that we bring the best of Microsoft and its ecosystem to help solve those. Oh, and yes, you asked me about what am I doing to fight the COVID blues? Well, I'll highlight a couple. I picked up woodworking. I built a few pieces of furniture, and my family, at least, they're big fans. My wife just asked me to build a plyo box for her. So that's next on my list. And I am following a passion that's been close to me for a long time. I wanted to make sure I know how to play Wish You Were Here from Pink Floyd. I picked up an acoustic guitar, signed up with the guitar teacher who teaches my kids, all online, using Microsoft Teams. And now I'm happy to say I can play, at least for friends and family.
That's great. Thanks for sharing that, Sandeep. So when this whole thing is over, I'm going to have you at the house to build my cabinet that I need in the garage. And then, Gene, you can come over and sing your version of Pink Floyd's Wish You Were Here while Sandeep's playing guitar. So can't wait for everyone to get together. So for the audience of awareness, both of you actually joined Microsoft directly from the industry. Can you talk to us about the journey of, why you went from financial services industry focused jobs to joining a tech company like Microsoft? Maybe, Sandeep, you want to start with that?
Sure. The majority of my career I have spent working with financial services clients, both banks and capital market clients. I used to be a consultant, and I'd say late 2018, 2019, it was very clear to me that we were at the verge of a major transformation in the industry, driven by changes in customer expectations, driven by competition, especially from neobanks and fintechs, and enabled by technology. The growth of public cloud, open APIs, big data and analytics, the list goes on. And interestingly, what I saw is that many of the challenges that we had struggled with, my clients had struggled with, could now be addressed by some of the new innovation that Microsoft and its competitors were introducing. So it was obvious to me that I could drive real impact by being a tech innovator and bridging our capabilities with what our customers need. And if anything, Edwin, the event of the last year has stress tested many of those hypotheses. Right? The reason the banking system has proved resilient is because of many of the trends I just highlighted. So this is a great time to be in banking and in tech.
Gene, how about you? Trained opera singer to financial services to Microsoft. We're thankful that you ended up here. But how did that journey come about? And maybe what influenced your decision to make this transition?
So as a trained opera singer, you can imagine not a lot of jobs. And my father sat me down one day and he said, get a real job, move out of the house, start your life. So, what am I going to do? I had a little bit of background in computers while I was going through school, and that landed me with a financial institution, Chase. And I stayed. I liked it. It was challenging. It was creative. And I spent the rest of my career, over 30 years, working in banks. I've been through a number of different financial institutions and saw a lot of different perspectives. But like Sandeep, I saw, things are changing. Technology is advancing to a point where we could really revolutionize the way in which we live our lives and the way in which we do our businesses. And for me, that was banking. And so when Microsoft came calling, I jumped at it. The leadership of Satya and the pivot that this company was making. It wasn't all just about landing software and word processing and the classic things that Microsoft was known for. It was about changing the industry. Microsoft was really looking at how can we help our customers across all of the different spectrums change and meet the future and delight their customers. And so here I am taking the information and experience that I had in banking and now applying it to the 21st century. So that's the change, and I love it. I have to say it's probably the best part of my career so far.
Thanks, Gene, for sharing that perspective. Speaking of change and, what's all happening, let's double click and get your perspective on this. What are some of the trends and influences we're seeing in financial services driving that change today?
There are quite a few, but I'll pick out a number of the most dominant ones. And it's the changing customer expectation. It's a digital world. And remember, whether it's a corporate who's working with the bank or an individual, everybody is an individual, even a corporate treasurer, and they have experiences online and through digital services, and they're expecting those experiences to transfer into their bank. So banks are now trying to figure out, how do I digitize and how do I meet those customer expectations? The threat of disruption for banks is real. It's here. It's everywhere. You've got fintechs. There are other types of neobanks that are coming in. Banking is just under the gun, and everybody wants a piece of it. It's a sticky type of business. It's a critical type of business. And these technology companies are really coming in. They're not encumbered by all kinds of legacy systems, spaghetti code, as we call it, right? System built on top of system. And so these technology companies are very nimble, and they can adjust and take over where a bank is still running and scrambling to try to catch up. And the last thing that I'll mention, although there are so many others, it's the regulatory environment and fraud and cybercrime. The rules are getting tougher for banks, and because these fintechs are not a specific bank, they're not licensed as a bank, they kind of skate under the radar of some of the regulatory requirements, which makes it easier for them to function, but banks are still encumbered. And because so much more is going online, fraud and cybercrime are just everywhere, and banks really have to double down on protecting their data and their customers.
Let's pivot a bit here. Sandeep, there's a quote from our CEO, Satya, that we've often used on the show. We've seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months. Can you talk to us a little bit about the impact of COVID-19, specifically in the banking sector?
Thanks, Johansson. Let me start off with one of the points that Satya made, and that is the acceleration. If you think about what Gene talked about the changes in customer expectations, that has definitely got accelerated. Many customers, for the very first time, use digital channels to meet their banking needs because they could not go to a branch. Also, the way we work changed. We'll reflect on that a little later. Let me just look at where we are today. Sitting here on April 19th, there is optimism in the air. Vaccinations, the rate of vaccination is increasing. We are also seeing that there is almost $2 trillion of savings that consumers have built last year. So there's that pent up demand and the consumer fueled growth that most economists are expecting. In fact, most analysts are now projecting 6 to 7% growth in GDP. That's a positive. If you look at IT spending forecast, Gartner is projecting that in 2021, IT spending is going to be greater than 6% as banks resume the digital transformation that many of them had to hit pause last year to meet the immediate demands of COVID-19. Not all is positive. Banks are still going to be facing some challenges. Interest rates are at historic lows. If you listen to what Chairman Powell just said, the Fed is going to continue to keep interest rate low, even though there are some inflationary expectations. Low interest rates does impact net interest margin, which is a substantial portion of many banks' earnings. So that's going to put pressure on banks' margins. And though losses have not been as high as some had projected, and in fact, if you look at recent earnings, many of the banks have been releasing some of the reserves that they had built up. There are, for example, still 17 million mortgages that are under forbearance. So there is likely going to be some more stresses in the horizon that banks are getting ready for. So what does it mean for our clients? They will continue to invest in their digital transformation. But as they look at decisions around digital transformations and investments, they'll be looking for those that have a quick payoff. They're going to invest today in the journey that they know they have to make, but they need to see value soon.
Sandeep, you've just summarized how COVID has impacted banking. Thanks for, doing that. But for all of us, the impact of the pandemic has significantly shifted the way we work. So how does all of that relate to how we work in the future, as well as how banking operates moving forward with the disruption? Microsoft just released a work trends report. Can you share your perspectives on a few items from the report and how it relates to banking in the future?
A few things I want to highlight about the report before I get into some of the findings. This report has been based on trillions of productivity signals that are captured in Microsoft 365 and LinkedIn, and also survey of workers around the world that we did. I believe we surveyed almost 30,000 people across 31 markets. Also, as you may be aware, Microsoft Research has spent a lot of time looking at the nature of work and how the nature of work is evolving. I would highly encourage our viewers to spend some time with this report. It has really interesting insights, but I'll call out a few. The first is that flexible work is here to stay. Second thing that stood out to me personally, and all of us are experiencing it, is that the high productivity that we have seen is masking an exhausted workforce. We all have felt the burnout of back-to-back meetings, of trying to balance work and family. And another very interesting insight is about what's happening to our networks, how our networks are shrinking, especially when we have been fully remote, and what that means for productivity and innovation. Let me spend a little bit of time on these because I think these are important callouts. When you talk about flexibility and the fact that flexible work is here to stay, the survey indicates that almost 73% of those who responded to it do want flexible work options. 67% of these employees want more in-person collaboration after the pandemic is over. So we need to respond to it and provide them an environment in which they can work both in the digital world and the physical world. And in response, we have seen that leaders are considering planning for hybrid. 66% of the leaders who we surveyed are planning for a hybrid workplace. So flexibility is going to be very important going forward. The high productivity masking an exhausted workforce, I think it's pretty obvious. I'm not going to spend time on it. Like all of us are experiencing it, as I mentioned. But this shrinking network is very important for us to reflect a little on. What our research has shown is that interactions with close network, people who we work with on a daily basis, that actually increased, whereas those with distant networks has diminished during the pandemic. Now, if you go back to the time when we used to be in the office, right, and bump into our colleagues, at the coffee, in the coffee room, or walking into a meeting, that helped build the social capital that brings trust, the exchange of ideas that leads to innovation and increased productivity. That is definitely being impacted. But what our research shows is that there's definitely some hope in the horizon. When we compare data in New Zealand, which has gone through a lockdown and then has gone back to hybrid and in-person work, and compare it to the US, what we see is that the siloing of this network has actually decreased. So there's hope. We need to take this research. We need to see what is coming out of the research in how we design work going forward.
Thanks, Sandeep, for sharing your perspectives on that work trends report. We'll be sure to include a description and a link to gain access to this below. So, Gene, let's shift to you a little bit and talk a little bit about your thoughts on the evolution or maybe the future of banking, given all these trends and everything that Sandeep shared around hybrid work. Curious to get your perspectives on this.
Yeah, so let's start when we talk about banking. Let's start on the retail side and think about branches, because that's what hits us first and foremost as consumers. The branch is not going to go away from all that we're seeing and all that the banks are talking about. The branch is still important, but I think the role of the branch is going to change. It's going to be less about a place to go to execute a transaction. People have now learned they can do that online. But it is going to be a place where people will go, whether they're individuals or small businesses, they're going to go there for advice. They're going to look to have the bank help them in their lives and help them in their businesses. So the advisory services and intelligence that a banker brings to the table is going to be paramount. That's also going to create a community environment. I'm going to go to my branch because I want more access to more things that will enrich my life, that will help me drive my business. And it could be additional services, or it could be that information so that I invest my money smartly and drive my business intelligently. The branch itself will probably undergo some change. I mean, physically, it's going to have to be situated in such a way that people feel safe, at least initially, and there's proper distance. But it's also going to be geographically restructured a little bit. Does the bank need 2 branches a block apart or 3 blocks apart? So I think there's going to be some geographical adjustment that's being made so that the branches are more strategically placed, easier to get to, but not crowded on top of each other, and that'll create efficiencies. I think the branch also is going to morph to a lot more services online and might even end up being a virtual environment, like the one that we've got pictured, where your avatar walks in and you run around and can transact in a 3D environment. What's also going to happen is going to be the way banks manage their data. They've got to get hold of it, and they've got to start connecting the information. If you think of your experience today when you go into a bank, whether it's through a phone or online, especially on the phone and you're calling a contact center, how many times do you have to repeat the same information as you're passed from one person who can help you to the other person who can help you better, and so on and so forth? There's a challenge that banks have in having that through line of information. That's got to change. That information has to be connected with the branch and with the contact center and with your back office processing. And then finally, I mentioned the branch is a community hub. This is a great opportunity for banks to look at creating an environment online in a cloud where their customers can come together. The small, medium businesses could have a new sales channel. The consumers have a new place to go for life services, as well as shopping and access to all the things that make their life complete. And the bank is at the center of this, helping and financing. So I think there are a number of big changes, and they're very exciting coming forward.
Hold on, Gene. So, I'll be honest, I haven't been inside of a retail bank in over a year. And when we think about the hybrid work that Sandeep talked about and the working from home, what is the new norm here? And how is this all going to fit in terms of how we work, how bank employees work, and what does that look like?
So a couple of things, and that's a super question, because the physical branch is going to be there. It's going to have to be staffed, but they're going to be different roles. And I think there are a couple of ways that bank employees are going to find changes. First, I think there's going to be a lot more fungibility, as they say, in the role of the bankers and the bank employees. A lot of cross-skilling and upskilling. So the concept of a universal banker, somebody who can step in and do any number of roles and morph between a branch and a contact center or even back office, is going to become more prominent. And that gives the bank itself an opportunity to really grow and cultivate their staff and cut down on attrition rates and training people and then watching them walk out the door to go to the competition. I think it's going to make it a much richer experience for the employee. Sandeep mentioned, hybrid work. That is going to happen, and that will transfer here in the branch. There's no reason why there has to be a physical person sitting inside the branch to provide advisory services. If the individual goes online, they can have a live chat with their banker. And so there's that give and take of, yeah, I want to go into the branch and I'll make an appointment online and I'll see you physically, but I might also want to do that remotely. And that ability to go back and forth is going to be very prominent. So the banker, him or herself, is going to have a lot of flexibility. For folks who work in the office, maybe the more corporate focused bankers, they're going to have some changes as well. They'll probably have to be in the office a couple of days a week or visiting a customer, but their ability to dial in is going to mean that they can live anywhere and commute or dial in. And that opens up a pool of people and talent that the bank was restricted from and gives a lot better opportunity for people to grow and change. So it's going to end up being a very exciting environment that's going to foster things like cross-skilling and upskilling and really broaden the pool of work, responsibility. It might even shift things to task sourcing instead of a simple job with a specific role. Now you can do a whole bunch of things. Make sense?
To add to what Jean said, right, this ties a lot to what we have learned, right? The accelerated learning we had over the last year, right? And what do we need to do this right? Plan for flexibility. I think this should be coming through in all that we have been talking about, right? We need to invest in space and technology that bridges this physical and digital world. Absolutely critical, right? We do have to make sure that we are cautious and we are combating digital fatigue, right? That is going to be important. We need to make sure we are focused on that. We need to rebuild social capital, both within our teams and with our customers. There's those connections, those human connections, absolutely critical, right, to how we work and how we build trust. And then we have to rethink how do we make sure that we are competing for and we can continue to attract the best and most diverse talent. It's exciting times ahead.
It sure is. Gene and Sandeep, thanks for sharing those perspectives. It just makes me think of a documentary I just saw with the family around the fire in London that basically tore the whole, like, 3/4 of the city down, but they were able to do some lessons learned. They did a rebuild, and it's absolutely beautiful today. So I'm thinking, we're going to be learning a lot from this, and the future of banking is going to be super exciting, just like you said. So this is great stuff. Sandeep, let's turn it to you. We just had a good discussion about the banking branch of the future. What are some of the other priorities our banking customers are focused on, and what is Microsoft doing to help drive this transformation?
Absolutely. But, we are very focused, from the worldwide industry team down on what we call our industry priority scenarios. And what this comes down to is from the listening that we talked about earlier. We have been talking to our clients, we have been talking to our partners, we're talking to analysts, and see what are top of mind to our customers. And they are empowering employees through teamwork. We have touched on this throughout the conversation today. How do you manage risk across the organization? And remember, we are in a highly regulated industry, and more importantly, an industry that takes risk. Balancing risk and rewards is very important to what banks do. It's central to what banks do. And that's where we are engaging in conversations with clients around how do you make sure that you can forecast better what's happening, what's going to happen. How can you plan for the various scenarios that may play out as boards and management are looking ahead and looking at emerging from the crisis stronger and more resilient? There's high performance computing that is available that can change the way, right? You can address some of the scenario analysis in a much more robust, meaningful manner and provide information that is valuable for decision makers. How do you look at the control environment and how do you enhance it? How do you empower your employees so that they can innovate? So there's a lot that's going on here that we are focused on, but these priorities are what Jean and I and our teams are engaged on every day. And let me tell you this. I have not walked into a single meeting where we have not gotten additional feedback and engagement that reinforces that we are in the right path.
Thanks, Sandeep. It's great to see Microsoft's focus on these innovative scenarios that are really driving those customer outcomes in banking. In the interest of time, Jean, do you want to pick another one of these scenarios and maybe share your perspectives?
Sure. I'll pick the one that focuses on customers because that's at the heart of the bank's business. And Sandeep is right. Every component of banking is going to change, and technology is a way in which to adapt to those changes. But for the customer, it's so complicated now, right? I mentioned earlier, the bank customer has digital experiences in the other parts of their lives. They have a level of agility that they receive with other institutions and other vendors that they work with. There's a sharpness and a fastness and an intelligence, and banks are going to have to figure out how to do that. So I think it touches on the bank's change in culture and the ability to adapt, and then leveraging technology to enhance that customer experience. Take the data that you've got and figure out, what does the customer want? The information is there, and you layer on top of it technology that has learning and intelligence. You can start to understand, oh, this is how the customer behaves. These are the things that they're indicating they want. The bank can meet those needs proactively. And then continue to evolve the experience and the interaction with that customer. That's a big game changer, and it also allows the bank to compete with the technology companies who do that as a natural course of who they are. Touching the customer online, in the branch, and even contact centers, and especially behind the scenes, so that information becomes real power is going to be critical. And that's one of the key things in the solutions that Microsoft works with that our technology enables, that we're focused on.
This has been an interesting conversation. So what do we want to leave with the viewers as you depart today? Sandeep, you want to take this one?
Hey, Edwin, we shared briefly some of the great content and research, almost 50 plus research that Microsoft has done over the last year. There's a link here, and I would encourage our viewers to take a look at it and see what's of interest. You're also always welcome to reach out to your Microsoft account team. They can get you started on your digital transformation journey and help you meet your goals. Also, please feel free to reach out to Gene and I. We are here to help.
Sandeep and Gene, thank you for sharing your time and perspectives on this topic. I'm positive our viewers have learned a wealth of valuable information. So what we learned today is banks are going to continue to invest in their digital transformation, but first focusing on those that have quick payoffs to lay the foundation for the journey ahead.
We also discussed how the trends have moved at a slow speed until COVID accelerated the digital transformation journey, especially around the changing customer expectations and disrupting and shaping the hybrid work model. So Microsoft did research and published a work trends report around how the world is changing.
Then we heard about what the future of banking will look like, opening up more possibilities for a diverse set of workers and opportunities to more focus and enhance connected digital experiences.
Really great stuff. Johansson, let's move to Q&A. What are some of the viewers asking?
Thanks, Edwin. We've got a question here from our live audience around, everyone talks about the importance of industry. How is Microsoft's approach more impactful than others? Sandeep, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, we start with the easy questions, right? Well, hey, I'll start with people. We have invested in a team that has deep expertise in financial services and in areas that are important to banking, security, resilience, compliance, to name a few. This expertise sits in our worldwide team that Gene's a part of, and also in our field, like I sit here in the US team. So we want to make sure that we stay close to our customers, understand what is top of mind, and then we have robust processes in place to engage our product and engineering teams to make sure that they are developing and meeting the needs of our customers. And let's not shy away. We have some excellent technology that can help our clients and partners innovate. The FS Cloud is an example of the kind of investment that we are making. I think we'll need a whole webcast to talk about FS Cloud, so I won't get into it. But let me put it this way. Microsoft is putting its investments, dollars, and people where it needs to be so that we can drive maximum impact for our clients.
We're definitely excited about the FS Cloud. Be sure to keep an eye out on a future episode at FSI Friday. So thank you for that. We're super excited. Have another question here from the audience. What is one of the positive outcomes around this disruption? Gene, maybe we'll start with you, and then Sandeep will get your perspectives after.
Well, it's hard to look at a pandemic the way we have and find something positive, but there are a few things, and it's the change to the way businesses run, the fact that we are moving to a more digital world, and we're also moving to a more accessible world. Everybody's taken a step back and looked at how can we bring people together and how can we make life easier. And so diversity and inclusion is a critical component. It had a spotlight before the pandemic, and I think now it's shining very, very brightly on it. Accessibility and making sure that every voice is heard. Microsoft is passionate about this, and all of our products and services have accessibility features built in. We have centers of excellence, help desks. We really have recognized that accessibility, people with disabilities, people of all walks of life are talent. And that talent is some of the most valuable asset that a company could have. And we are charged with embracing it and helping our customers embrace it. What could be more positive than helping everybody achieve their very best, which is also Microsoft's mission.
Right. If there is a cloud, there's a silver lining in a very dark cloud. It is that talent is everywhere in a hybrid world, right? And as Gene mentioned, remote opportunities are more attractive to Gen X, to women, to those without a graduate degree. So we are opening more doors, and we do this right. We will definitely have a more inclusive, a more innovative world.
Thanks, Gene and Sandy. We're actually going to be having our next session on FSI Fridays focused on accessibility. So great timing there. Gene, we've got another question in here that I think probably fits best with you. You didn't talk about ESG when talking about the pandemic impact. Can you share your thoughts on where ESG fits in?
Yeah, thanks. That is an area that I'm very passionate about, and Microsoft is also very passionate about. Our customers were interested in ESG, and they were trying to be responsible and sustainable before the pandemic. Again, the pandemic shined a light on this, and everybody is now conscious of how fragile the world is and how we have to take care of it. I'm seeing more and more questions and conversations and projects with our customers in this space, whether it's in environment or in the social aspect. And from the customer's perspective, they're looking at it from a couple of different vantage points. First and foremost, how can they make their own companies better, more sustainable? And what can they do to, for example, achieve carbon neutrality or better usage of their footprints and electricity, water? So there are all kinds of efforts in just shoring up their own company. Then they're looking at how they can incorporate ESG into their products and services. So it touches on risk and it touches on the products themselves. And from a bank's perspective, how do you add an ESG score as you look and vet customers? Do things like KYC or determine a credit rating. Bringing in the bank customers' ESG scores is a very important way now for a bank to understand who their customer base is and reward certain behaviors over others. And then also a third way is looking at how the bank themselves can help their customers achieve a better level of sustainability, improve their own footprints. And so there's an advisory standpoint, as well as other tools and services that a customer could use from the bank that would improve their own footprint.
Thanks for sharing that, Gene. I think we actually have time for one more question. Sandeep, this might be yours. What is the biggest hurdle transformation project that is stumping banks?
It goes to people and culture. We have the technology that can enable it, but let us not discount that at the end of the day, it's people, process, and technology that have to go hand in hand. And I'll make it personal. Let me talk about my journey. 5 years back, when I heard about the cloud, it works for Netflix. It's not going to work for a bank, right? That's where I started. And then, here I am sitting in my computer. I want to learn about artificial intelligence. I can go spin up compute instance in Azure. I can open up a Jupyter notebook, which will walk me step by step through what I need to know so that I can learn and I can play with data and I can see the results. So, I personally have gone through that journey, and I can tell you, for us to make it real and to get critical mass so that this change, is going to be sustainable, we need to train. We need to show the art of the possible. We need to work with our clients to get wins. And then, the dam breaks, right? And the change is going to, accelerate. And guess what? When you empower people who are looking for these insights, they will come with a new way of doing work that we cannot imagine, right? And we cannot imagine now. So that's what we need to do. We need to democratize and we need to empower people to drive this change. And then all you have to do is sit back and get ready for this new world of banking.
Sandeep, thank you for that inspiring answer. I think all of us out there have found a new way to do something and do it better. So we're really looking forward to the future and, as lessons learned. But it looks like we're out of time. So thanks again for joining via YouTube or watching live and asking great questions.
If you haven't already, be sure to register for FSI notifications and invites by visiting aka.ms/FSI Fridays.
We're also open to constructive feedback, so please send us your comments and suggestions at aka.ms/FSI Fridays feedback.
Be sure to catch the recordings of our previous sessions on our FSI Fridays YouTube channel at aka.ms/FSI Fridays recap, where you can also post any follow-up questions that weren't covered today.
And don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So Joe Hansen, we're getting heated up for April. Weather's warming up, so I guess you see what I did there. What do we have lined up for the next 2 weeks?
Definitely. On April 23rd, we're going to actually be discussing inclusive design as we hear inspirational stories and experiences of how building for accessibility impacts everyone and how accessible technologies deliver value for employers across productivity, talent, reach, and compliance.
Then on April 30, we'll meet with Microsoft's General Manager and Director for Product of Microsoft Viva as they discuss the recent launch of Microsoft Viva and the opportunity this represents for financial services to enhance the employee experience.
You won't want to miss it.
Thanks, and see you next time
on FSI Fridays.
Thank you.